Okay, good morning. So what I'm going to show you guys today is how to make a very quick, simple pinch pot to start as the basis or the foundation for your upcoming clay project. So in working with clay to make a pinch pot, you want to make sure that everything is really soft and really plastic. And I'm just going to start working this into a nice sphere shape. You can sort of pat it like this. If the clay is too dry, it'll start to crack really easily on you, so you want to make sure that you've got really nice soft wet plastic clay from the bag. Also that it is pre-wedged before you start working with it. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just going around and finding anywhere that there's a little crack and just lightly smoothing that over with my finger. So about here's where you want to start. Your next step is going to be to take your thumb and you are going to poke a hole into the middle of that clay ball, almost all the way down to the bottom, but you don't want to poke your thumb out of the other end. You want to feel to where you have about ½ inch. You want to feel to where you're about ½ inch away from the bottom. About there. Once you get there, our next step is to start the pinching process. So with pinching, everything that you're going to be doing is using that inside thumb and then those outside fingers to lightly press and pinch on the clay until you squeeze it down to a consistent thickness. What you want to have is your clay be, for right now, about ½ inch thick, and we'll go back around and thin it out again. But you don't want to squeeze it down to where it's too thin all at once. You want to start with it a little bit on the heavier side, and then we can thin it out a little bit more as we go. So I always start with a pinch pot by pinching this top portion first, and then working my way around, and then I move down and pinch this part, and then I move down and pinch this part, and down and down. The very last thing that you're going to pinch out is this lower section down here. If you pinch this too quickly, your clay is going to get stretched out too soon, and you're going to end up with a lot of cracks and stuff along your rim of your pinch pot. So I'm just going to lightly press and start up here at the top, and then I'm going to rotate and press again and again and again. And I'm just going to start very lightly feeling for the thickness of that clay, trying to get it all to that about ½ inch or so thick. And I just keep going around. The trick with a pinch pot, if you want it round, keep going around and around and around. Take your time, there's no rush. These are just little light, soft baby pinches. Now, I'm slowly starting to, as I'm going around and around, pinching, trying not to go too thin, but I'm also slowly working my way down as I rotate. And what you'll see is happening, the interior of this space is starting to open up and expand, but I haven't pinched out this rim just yet. I'm going to wait till I get to the very bottom for that. So around and around. A trick and a rule with pinch pots for now is you do not sit them on the table. They need to stay cupped in your hand, because your hand creates a really nice natural curve to create the round shape that we're going with. So around and around, and just keep feeling for the thickness of the clay. Where you ever feel it's a little bit thicker than the other spots, just give it a little small soft pinch. Let's switch hands. And the same thing. Now I'm moving down to where I'm pretty close to the bottom now. You can see that this rim is starting to open up and get wider. And now this rim will sort of be the last thing that I pinch. If I want it to go outward a little bit more, I'm gonna pinch. One thing that you don't want to do is pinch your rim really thin and give yourself a very skinny little rim like this. that is not good. You want it to stay the same consistent thickness all the way through your whole pinch pot. And if you notice, I'm sort of using the side of my thumb to help me pinch this out, and it's going to give me that nice rounded rim that I want for a pinch pot. Now, so I have a super simple, it's a little bit on the thick side, but a super simple basic pinch pot. It's round this way. I can rotate it. It's got a pretty good start. Now, if you see that you have anywhere along your rim where like little baby cracks are starting to form, you want to cup this in your hand, and I use the side of a finger to help me kind of brace it so I don't just squish it. But I will just take an extra finger while I'm bracing it on the outside and smooth that rim wherever I see any little cracks starting. Now, as of right now, this is a little bit on the thick side. If you do need to get to a point where you need to set your piece down for a minute, you want to get either a wooden clay board that we have in class that's covered with fabric, canvas, or I'm just going to use a bat and a little bit of extra fabric on top of it. Rule of thumb, don't ever set clay down on a smooth, non-porous surface like plastic or our tabletops or anything like that, because your clay is so wet and it's so slick, it will kind of suction cup itself to the top of that table surface, and you will have a really hard time getting it off. And if I want to rest this for just a minute, what I'm going to do is set it on the flat rim side. That way I don't get a big flat bottom on the bottom of this. So you want to set it gently upside down. Now, in looking at this, you can also take a rib. You can take a metal rib. I like to clean off the edges so I don't have anything that'll scratch my project. And you can take this rib and you can start smoothing very gently the surface of this clay. It'll sort of start scraping and kind of polishing and just smoothing that out. So you can do this at sort of whatever stage you want. Usually I reserve this for when I start to see cracks or when I get to the very end. I will do this for my pinch pot, but just to go ahead and show you what this stage looks like. I can start at the bottom and pull my way up, kind of rotating my project as we go. So that's really sort of polished and burnished the outside. Now, if your clay is a little bit on the thick side like mine, if we look at this next to the ruler, I'm about 3/8 of an inch thick right now. So I think I can go a little bit thinner because it feels like it still feels kind of heavy. You can sort of feel it and roll it in your hands and feel that weight distribution. It feels kind of blocky. So I'm going to go through one more time and pinch it again and just thin one more time really consistently, very subtly, and smooth and round this form out a little bit more. So again, I'm going to start down there in that bottom. I want to make sure I don't have a big heavy flat part in that bottom. Chunky part, and just really gently, just using your thumb and your outer fingers to feel the pressure and that thickness of your walls. Consistency in clay is very important. You want your walls to all be the same thickness, and the reason why is because as your clay is drying, your clay is shrinking. But if you have one section that is much smaller, much thinner than another section, it will dry much faster, meaning the clay will shrink, and that will put tension on your clay where that one area is shrinking faster than the others, and you will notice that you'll start to see cracks there, and those cracks are really difficult to fix. So I've just gone through one more time, and I've just brought that thinness down just a little bit more. I'm really starting to get this nice round shape. It's gotten a little bit bigger in the pinching process. If it's bigger, that means you're really but stretching your clay out to the maximum size that it can be But notice I haven't gone really thin, too thin anywhere, trying to keep it all consistent. Another trick that you can do that I like, and this really helps me sort of stretch out that last little bit of clay to really open it up, is I use one hand as my cup to really make my mold for my rounded shape. And then I'll take 1 or 2 fingers on the inside of this pot and I will twist and I'll sort of stretch that clay out, widening it into my palm, and then kind of rotate. Stretch. And it's so soft that this works really well. And I can just feel on the outside of my palm how it really is stretching that clay. You can also do it from the bottom, using your hand as that cup, down to the rim. That's going to get out any of that extra thickness, and I can just feel it being pushed against my round mold of my hand, really rounding that out. Now this is much, much bigger than it was just a little bit ago, and I can smooth and sort of polish and make that inside look nice. But since this is going to be just the very beginning stages, we'll have time to really perfect that inside part later. I'm really worried about the outside at this moment. So you can see that it's gotten a little bit bigger, and so this is my last step. I am going to give it a nice soft little baby tap real gently, just to help me flatten out and smooth that rim. Get it secured. I will smooth and rib this one more time. And a good trick is if you have any spots where you see that part of it sticks out too much or it's not quite perfectly round, you can take a ruler, an old ruler, don't use my nice ones, but you can really gently tap the outside of that clay, and that will help you flatten and round one like little area. And so once you get to here, that's your very last stage of your nice perfect pinch pot. For my class, when you're finished with this and you don't have any more time to work on it for the day, what I want you to do is grab a needle tool, or even a pencil will work, but a needle tool from the clay tool drawers, and you're going to put your initials real little on that very bottom. You're going to grab a plastic bag, and we want to wrap this up so that way it's going to stay damp enough to work with tomorrow. I give it a little spritz with one of our water bottles for clay, just to make sure, keep some moisture on it. Then I'm going to put this in the bag, and I'm going to try to wrap this plastic over it a couple of times. So I've got multiple layers of plastic on it. So that's about 3 on that top. And then everything else I'm going to tuck under. Then you can grab a piece of tape and a Sharpie and write your name on it.